Hello there and welcome to Witch Hazel's Cauldron. Yay, I'm back, hopefully for a while. Thank you to all of those of you who have hung in there waiting for me. But today I'm very excited because right now, or in the recent past, depending on when this gets posted, we are having our big gem and mineral show here in Denver. It's a huge thing that encompasses about 4 different gem and mineral shows, kind of all in the same place over at our Coliseum. So because of that, this to me is crystal season, and I thought it would be a good idea to do a video talking about crystals, getting to know them, and working with them. So in this video, what I'm planning to talk about is the crystals that I am currently obsessed with and why, ways that I personally use crystals in my work, some of my favorite crystal resources, and also how I go through the process of getting to know my crystals. So if that is of interest to you, then I hope you'll stick around and I'll just try and get started. All right, the crystals that I am currently obsessed with and why. I made a little roster because I was thinking of going to the Gem and Mineral Show. I have not yet, mostly because I don't want to spend money that I don't have, and I am sure that I will if I go there. But in the chance that I go, these are the items that I would look for. Now, top of my list is labradorite. And this is just because this is my all-time favorite stone, my favorite crystal. This is kind of my thing. I have a palm stone, a labradorite palm stone that I keep in my purse wherever I go. I just have a super connection with this crystal, and so I'm always looking for additional pieces. Another one, very important to me, is sugilite, which is, hopefully you can see that one there, this tiny little thing, highly expensive, fairly rare, but for those of you who saw it, I did mention in another video, I'll have to figure out which one and I'll link it below. This crystal actually came and found me in a dream. It's the only thing I have ever experienced like that where I actually got the name of the crystal in a dream. I had no clue what it was. And then the additional items I have on my list, I will make a side note that these are all very light colored stones. I have a real affinity right now for the lighter hued crystals. And I think that's because I have a lot of spirit stuff going on at the moment. And that encompasses work with the divine and work with shadows. I have my own inner spiritual stuff that's going on that I need to work with, and I've been receiving a lot of higher guidance at the moment. It's just that kind of theme for me right now. And so a lot of the lighter hued crystals, there is the thought that these are more kind of connected with or in tune with the higher vibrations, the divine vibrations. And I do go by that myself. I do believe this is true. Whereas the darker hued crystals are more connected to the energies and vibrations of the earth. So when you need grounding, when you need an earth connection, those are the go-to items. And depending on what's going on in life, you know, one or the other or both may be necessary. So, but right now in my life, it's the light hues. And that includes things like celestite, which I do not currently have, but was drooling over the other day in the metaphysical shop. And that one is good for connections with the angelic realm. I also am very interested in Larimar, and I have been for a while since I did the Little Souls spell work. Initially, I wanted that stone for that, but Larimar, again, is a very expensive stone, so I do not yet have any Larimar. And you may notice a theme here for some reason, and I blame my grandmother who loved pretty things, pretty expensive things. I tend to gravitate toward rare and precious kind of gems, and unfortunately I find out after I say, oh, I want that, that's exactly what I need. Then that's when I find out how hideously expensive it is. So Larimar is on my wish list for one day. Another favorite of mine, which I believe I have here, is, I say rhodochrosite. Somebody corrected me last time, rhodochrosite, however you say it. This pink and white stone here. And I fell in love with this stone in Argentina. It was first introduced to me as Inca Rose and the national stone of Argentina on one of my trips to Buenos Aires. And I have loved this stone ever since. It just has such a warm, gentle, loving feeling to me, similar to rose quartz. Very, very similar. And I don't know, this light pink has just been, any of these crystals have been kind of in this theme of compassion and self-love and healing that I'm kind of going through. So these have been very important to me. Additionally, light green stones, for example, calcite. I've been really loving calcite lately. This is not green, this is blue, but blue calcite. And these are, for me, light blue is a very healing. So whereas the pink was healing in the heart sense, the blue for me is healing in the overall sense, kind of like medicinal healing. And then of course anything in the green hues would also relate very well to the heart chakra. The greens and blues kind of overlap for me to do that job. This one is somewhere in between the green and the blue, and this is aquamarine. And this one I have specifically, right now I have it over by my ancestor bottle, but this also had to do with this is what I went with when I couldn't get the Larimar. I went with aquamarine for the Little Souls spell. But so there you have it. Those are the items that are currently holding my attention. And so now let me talk a little bit about how I use these crystals. I have really lately developed an affinity for rough stones, just natural rough stones. I love them and I just enjoy the texture of them. But I also really love tumbled stones. Tumbled stones, they're just so smooth and easy to handle. So I will use either, usually, but always some sort of a chunk stone. And I will use them in things like crystal grids. I've mentioned those before. I think I've shown pictures a couple of times of, I had a grid on my ancestor altar that you can find on my Instagram. I also did the grid for my grandfather. And I like to arrange grids on my altar. So grids are a big thing for me. Also, jewelry is a good way of using crystals. You probably can't see, but in my earrings I have agate, I think a blue agate. And yesterday I was wearing my moonstones. I have a whole set of moonstone earrings, a pendant, a large pendant, and a ring. So that's a very good way to kind of get to know your crystals better, is to pick out different crystals for different days and wear them on those days. I knew somebody, that's how she learned her crystals, was she chose the crystals that were associated with each day of the week, and then each of those days, then she would wear them. She would have to look them up, she would have to pull them out, and through that process got to know them better, which I thought was a really wonderful idea. I also use them in crafting. I don't have my ancestor bottle is sitting over there, but on my ancestor bottle, I used one of the pieces of Tibetan quartz that was part of the crystal grid I used for my grandfather when he was in hospital and dying. So after the completion of that grid, I kept the materials to use then later, and one of them was the Tibetan quartz. I had 4 pieces. One went onto my ancestor bottle. The other 3 I have designated to become jewelry pieces for myself, my mother, and my sister. So using stones in craft work is also a very good way to get to know them and to become connected with them. And one more option, and one more thing that I like, is prayer beads. Now this is a set of beads that I made years and years ago, and me being me, of course, I don't believe I wrote this down. If I wrote down what all the crystals were, I don't know where I wrote it down, which is unfortunate because I remember going to Michael's and picking out these beads with a purpose. I remember that each of these kinds of beads had some purpose in this whole arrangement. So this is a wonderful way of getting to know your gemstones as well. And I will try to remember to link below, but I got the idea for this through a book called Pagan Prayer Beads. And it's easy to find, at least last I checked it was easy to find, and I'll see if I can put a link for it in the description for you. All right, now moving on from ways to use your crystals, some of my favorite crystal resources. Now, many of you have probably seen this little book, The Crystal Bible by Judy Hall, and there are several renditions of this now. This is a massively, massively popular book. I bought it because it was so popular, but in actuality, I don't use this book, and I will probably be getting rid of it very soon. And the reason is, as I was reading through many of the associations that she has for the different stones, a lot of it just does not resonate with me. A lot of it just does not ring like it's making sense. And that is totally just my observation. That's just me and how I feel about certain crystals. And then the death knell, the nail in the coffin for me, was the fact that she does not list peridot as a birthstone of August. And that is my birthstone in August, so I really took issue with that. But so this, I've heard, is a very good resource, not for me. So I will show you what I use instead. I love and adore this book, Crystals by Jenny Harding. And this book, now on occasion, I've looked for something in here, haven't found it. I mean, it's not that huge, it's not exhaustive, but it has many, many of the most common gems and minerals in here. But the thing I like about it is it has a very good mix of actual, what do you call that, gemology, geology study information, and metaphysical or new age type info as well. She begins the book with some information on crystals in history. So this is where you get your sulfides, silicates, borates, etc., etc., and how crystals are created in the earth. So it's got your scientific info, basic, plus stuff like the meaning of colors, why colors are important. And then in the back, there's a whole section on using crystals in healing and creating crystal waters and that sort of thing. Then all the way through, she's got, I don't know if I can flip through this a little bit, but just pages for each crystal going off of various colors. Like first she'll tell you about the color, why the color is important, and then give several pages of crystals that encompass that color. And it will include the scientific information, the Mons hardness, what its structure is, and that sort of thing, plus healing uses. So when I need info on a crystal, more often than not, this is where I go. I like this book. So other books that I know are very popular, which I would like to have, but just have not gotten around to it. Love is in the Earth, I believe, is a very is a classic. And there's another one, an encyclopedia of crystals and gems, but I can't remember the exact name of that one. So for right now, that one is my main go-to, and then of course I go to websites, things like that. Now, why is it important to include scientific knowledge of the gems? Many people don't care much about it. It's a lot of scientific speak that's difficult to pronounce, which is true, but my most important rationale for knowing at least how is this crystal constructed, the hardness of it, these things tell you things like, will it scratch easily? How do I need to take care of this crystal? Can it go in with others or can it not? Does it need to be covered with something? Is it going to react to light? Is it going to lose its color like amethyst? That's important information to know for storing your crystals. Also, the actual chemical composition comes in handy when you want to know how is best to cleanse this crystal, because certain groups of crystals are water soluble. They're made essentially the same way as like table salt or something like that, where you put them in water, they will dissolve. Might take longer, but you don't want to do that to a crystal if you can avoid it. If you want to keep that crystal, those should be maybe put in the sun or the moon or buried, or just use salt or something like that. Again, also you don't want to put crystals that are in danger of fading into the sun. So that's why I think it's important to have that information as well. Just at least some very basic info on it. All right, and my last tidbit here on resources. For my birthday, I was very excited. I got a new Oracle deck, and I know I've mentioned my Kuan Yin Oracle in the past. I love that Oracle. And this one is by the same author, Alana Fairchild. And this is the Crystal Mandala Oracle. And these are just beautiful because I have seen crystal oracles before that they just have pictures of the crystals, which to me is kind of boring. This one includes the crystal in the center of each card and a mandala as a focal point or as a visual aspect around it. And again, just like the Kuan Yin cards, these are amazingly beautiful. The artwork is just absolutely stunning. I love the colors, I love the art, everything about these cards, I had to have them. So these I am using in a similar fashion to how I'm using the Kuan Yin cards for my daily reflections, and or if I just want a quick response to something, I will pick up an oracle card, and these are becoming a favorite. I am not sure yet how well I like the explanations from the little booklet, but I'll let you know as time goes on how I enjoy these. All right, and we are getting a bit long-winded on this video, so I hope you don't mind, but my last item here is how I get to know my crystals. Now, I believe I did a blog post showcasing my worksheets that I made, which I am actually in the process of revamping, because as I've been using them, I found that I use some things more, some parts of the worksheet more and some less, so I'm redoing it. But I created a little worksheet, in this case for crystals, a space for a picture of that crystal, or I can draw in the shape or whatever I want in that space, and then I list first the scientific info. Where is it found, the hardness, how is it composed, that sort of thing. And then I put basically notes on different things. For example, why does this crystal stand out to me? Why do I like it? Like the rhodochrosite, and the connection for me with Argentina. And also finding out that one of the largest, best veins of this gem is right here in my home state of Colorado, one of the best specimens on display in our museum. So there's a connection there as well to two places that I really love. So what is it that makes the gem special to me? And then what are the attributes that I give it personally? When I first look at this crystal, what does it shout? Does it shout healing? Does it shout heart? Maybe earth, abundance? What is it that I think this crystal represents to me? And then I may add in some additional notes from a book or a website or something if I want that information. But what I have found in the past is when I just copy out information from someone else, some other resource, I almost never remember it. On why this seems important to me, it's much more meaningful, and I have an easier time remembering what each of the crystals are over time, because many of you, I'm sure, have been there. I've been there. You buy crystals just because they're pretty, because somebody said you need this, that, and the other. And then a couple years later, because if you're like me, you didn't label them, you're wondering, gee, this is nice. What is it? I don't know. Because you never used it again after that. So I move very slowly through my crystals. Whenever the urge develops to pick up a certain crystal, one of them calls to me, then I'm like, okay, that one is important to me right now. I need to figure out why. And then I sit with it. I go through my worksheet. Best case scenario, I will also do a couple of rounds of meditation with this stone to find out more information about why is this important? What should I be using it for? What kind of ideas come to me as what this crystal wants to be used for? And then when I do that, I include that as well in my notes in the worksheets. So by the end of it, I have a whole little compendium that I created myself based off of mostly my own intuition, with some additional relevant information for purposes of cleansing and care. And I have found that this is really a better way for me to learn not just my crystals, but also my herbs and anything like that I want to do. Okay, so I am officially over 20 minutes on this video, so I am going to kind of complete it there. I hope this was useful to you. Again, some things to remember are: go slow when you're learning something new, when you're picking out crystals, herbs, whatever it may be. Find the things that call to you, because those are the ones that want to be known, and those are the ones that you will have an easier time remembering over time. Also, if you are new to crystals or looking into using crystals in your practice, I highly recommend it. There is so much you can do with crystals, and they are so much fun, and they're just beautiful. It's a rare case when crystals just don't make someone happy. So I highly recommend figuring out your own way of learning the crystals and using them regularly in your practice. I hope this was helpful and informative, and thank you very much for sticking with me, and I'll talk to you again soon. Blessed be.